All right, so in light of these developments, let's continue to get some analysis. I'm joined now in studio by Professor Sipho Seepe. He's a political analyst. Prof, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Good afternoon.
Now, your take on the initial withdrawal of the former president of the commission. Many saying that this was anticipated, but some people saying that he was just being strategical here. He wanted to continue testifying on his terms and conditions.
Yeah, well, he's always a political animal and he's a strategist. So we should not hold that against him. You know, it's like if you're a doctor, we expect you to act like a doctor. And if you're a dog, we expect you to act like a dog. So the president as a political animal and as a strategist has always been strategic. And when he approached the commission, he was very clear after listening to the evidence that has been given that most of it has been based on what you may call beer hall gossip, and some can easily be explained because these are issues that are operational, that in time when people start asking questions, some of the so-called evidence and bombshell against him will collapse. Remember, we had Fekimento, how the media and the so-called group of analysts were saying these are bombshells. And just simple questions of fact made Fekimento's statements to collapse on their own. And later we had somebody like Mkhize Jonas, who, when he appeared the second time, he actually said to the judge Zondo to say, let's handle this inquiry carefully. Let's not Zumaize it. It is not about Jacob Zuma. It's bigger than that. It is about the accord we signed and the contract we signed as a people in terms of moving forward. So when you look at it, don't focus it on one person. And of course, it was almost like Jonas was anticipating the direction the commission will go, because while some people thought it would be about the Guptas and Jacob Zuma, we had Bosatsa coming in. And effectively, we found that many people in the ANC get implicated. So this has become more a commission on the ANC because when you talk about the state of capture, the party that has been in power since 1994 has been the ANC. So it is not something that needs to be individualized to one person.
Well, you have the former president saying that the commission was established to look into him specifically as an individual.
Yeah, what triggered it, and for some people who had planned it this way, they thought it would be about Jacob Zuma and the Guptas. But what some of us warn people about is that commissions by their nature, they take a life of their own. It's unlike a court of law where there is a crime that is specific. But when you are trying to understand a phenomenon, a social phenomenon, you inquire, you don't harass, you try to get as much information, and you allow yourself to be led by that information. So it's not an accident that a commission can start being narrowly defined, but when it ends, it will provide a broader understanding, which is what they should all be about, to say, how do we understand as a system so that we protect ourselves from that. So this is what is actually emerging. And so those who gave that interpretation can actually be proven right, because right now, even people we thought were not implicated in some form or another, we now read reports that they are implicated in terms of violation of the Constitution. And also that when you come up with a judgment, and this is what has happened with the courts in this country, some judges have become almost partisan in the ANC politics and have come up with judgments that are now going to haunt almost every politician.
But then, of course, the president was invited by the commission as a guest of the commission, really to respond to allegations and how he's been implicated by the previous witnesses before the commission. And in most cases, people say that he's been really not coming out to give answers. In most cases, he doesn't remember or he does not recall what might have happened. So some people say that it's either you know what happened, it's either you did it or you didn't do it.
Yeah, well, that's actually a fair comment. First, that he was invited. If you look at all other witnesses that came, they volunteered to come and say things about other people. With Jacob Zuma, he was invited by the judge, by the commission, to come and assist on these matters that he is supposed to have knowledge of. And he talked about those that he has knowledge of. He talked about the ANN7, he talked about the New Age, he talked about that he was behind the thinking about an alternative voice in the media. And one must also look at some of the resolutions of the ANC in the past, that the ANC has always complained about that our media is actually one-sided and biased, and talking about the mindset of that media. And some within the ANC have been saying the ANC must have its own newspaper. So he was putting that this idea of a newspaper, it was more about an alternative, and he didn't see anything wrong. But even further, he went to say, when it was established, these fellows who established it spoke to the top 6 of the ANC, spoke to the alliance. So he says that this is not something that was Nicodemously crafted. It was crafted with members of the ANC understanding that there should be multiplicity of perspectives in this country.
Now, going back to today's developments, really, now, the Commission's legal team will have to provide the former president with areas of interest in terms of their questioning. This, of course, is part of the agreement that was reached between the two parties. So the Commission's legal team will prepare a document for the former president, as I said, indicating exactly which parts of each witness's statement they want to question him on. Is this a victory for the former president's legal team? Because this is not the provision of questions prior, but this is just to indicate the areas of interest.
Well, to the extent that the president has been invited, and unlike other witnesses, and to the extent that there are people who made statements about him, and the legal team has been correct to say, look, we have no intention of coming there, but you have invited us. But if you want us to assist us, give us a number of questions so that we can prepare adequately, because we are not volunteers in this exercise. And there was a lot of brouhaha around that. People say, no, he wants to treat it differently. So effectively today, he has managed to get what he wanted, to say, send me the questions so that I can prepare. Because if people make allegations against me, let me see which ones are those that make sense. And the ones that don't make sense, I would not actually even entertain them. And some people have even commented that some of the questions has been asked are nonsensical questions, where he's asked to respond on what people said about him to other people. And says, how am I supposed to know that? And of course, there are areas, you see, what I also find interesting is that when he says, I cannot remember, which might also be strategic for him to say so, as a way of making sure that you don't ensnare yourself. But we can also accept that it is possible that he may not know. It's very interesting that when some other politicians don't remember, it gets accepted. But when, I mean, for instance, you have Pravin Gordhan, who could not remember that he has met the Guptas. People embrace that he honestly could not remember. But when it comes to others, they must actually remember.
So are you of the view that the Commission has treated the former president unfairly in terms of their line of questioning?
No, I don't think, I think, yes, the line of questioning, but I do think the Deputy Chief Justice has actually been fair, not only to the president, but to everybody. If you see how he has approached, he has shown a lot of patience. And in a way, that level of patience has actually worked, in the sense that sometimes people then make contradictory statements. I mean, I gave an example of Fegi Mento, where he himself said, now, I have difficulty in having to accept anything that you say, because you say you are on this flight, we check the flight details, you are not on it. You say you met these people, you know their house, but when we start asking about the details, you have no clue. If you take the case of the chief of protocol in the presidency, and who was dealing with the landing of the aircraft from India, when he was asked a number of questions, he said he can't remember, and he was made to remember through, and it is also possible that he couldn't remember carefully, but he accepted one thing, that yes, I was into name dropping, which if you ask many public affairs. They tend to do that. They are into name dropping so as to carry favor, but also as to fast track whatever request they want.
Now, the former president on his first day at the state capture inquiry, he started by giving a bit of background really into his political career, but also the previous attempts to assassinate, what he calls assassination of his character. We had him today addressing his supporters at a park near the venue where the commission was sitting, saying that basically making threats to tell on what people think that he does not know. He even said he can even tell who had ordered that the late Chrisani's house be destroyed.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are
Is that relevant, according to you?
No, I think what he said is that I've been provoked, and I've been provoked by even people who should know better, because they are not as clean as they make themselves out to be.
But does that have anything to do with the state capture allegations or the implication on state capture and corruption?
Well, this is why I was saying to a colleague that I like the article that was written by Jeremy Cronin, who actually felt that right now we are getting into a stage where we are busy coming up with conspiracies and the nostalgia about the past and all that, that maybe what we need to do is to focus ourselves on the facts. And because there are some people who are now also making counter allegations against other people. But I do think the judge will sift through all that. His approach would be to say these are the issues. But having said that, we must also understand that there are other people who do not want the truth to be told. And those, if you differ with them, they start accusing you of being hijacked, being a part of a fight back and all that, just because you question also their own stories. So we should not get into it. But some
people are saying that, Prof, if the former president has nothing to hide regarding the allegations of state capture and corruption, why does he bring back things that happened in the past and start making these threats as he did earlier today?
Well, I think the commission must make sure that all the things that are irrelevant are put outside. It must concentrate on what happened and what gave rise to that. Because remember, the most important thing is the understanding of what gave rise to state capture. And if the judge feels that all that information, however interesting it may be, it should be the information that should be discarded into the dustbin of history. He will decide that. But all other people who had been there have also talked about themselves. You should read the Praveen's statement. You should read Nkowi's statement. You should read all this. They all talk about their location in that history, to locate, to historicize whatever they're going to put in a context. But my concern is that we should be careful about those things that were said in the past, because even if they may be true, we should actually be saying, let the bygones be bygones. I remember in the past when Mandela was being told about the spies and all that, and his response was, we have a country to build. Let us concentrate on that which matters. And my sense on this is that let us deal with things that can be demonstrated to be things that have happened, and the logic that sustain those things, so that we can disrupt that logic.
All right, so today has been a very busy news day, of course, as we were looking into the issues at the state capture inquiry. The public protector was also giving out her findings on the sitting President Ramaphosa. Your take on those findings?
Well, again, we must go back to what do the facts say. We are a constitutional democracy, and there are rules in this, and there are regulations and there are laws. One of those is that if you are a member of parliament and a member of the executive, there are certain rules you must obey. There's something called the Code of Ethics, and it also involves also disclosure of the benefits that you receive in terms of donations, in terms of gifts and all that. So here you have a public protector says, you had the deputy president who had received all these donations. And just like the former public protector talked about Jacob Zuma, that he has unduly benefited. No one can say if money has been given that advances a politician who happens to also be a member of the executive can say that money does not unduly or otherwise benefit that person. And if it was correct for Jacob Zuma to be found to have unduly benefit on something, one could also argue. And this is the reasoning. That's the first one. The second one is misleading Parliament. When the current president was asked a pointed question, he was very clear to say, I have researched, I've looked at and made sure I accessed all this information. I can tell you that if it can be found that my son has been involved in something that is problematic, I'll take my son to the police station. He volunteered that information. I tend to follow the news, but I've not seen him take his son to the police station. So that's the first one. The second thing is, even when he later said no, discovered that he has misled Parliament, he correctly went to say, sorry, the information that I got was untrue. But the fact that he went back to correct it does not mean that he had not misled. It's almost like, at least what it does, it gives it lightens the burden of guilt. It sort of says he may not have been intentional, but there have been other things that have actually come that the public protector found him wanting in. So the issue is, if, as he has always shown, and also the statement that comes from his office, that he has always acted in compliance, not defiant. But elsewhere, people could also say, when it involves other people, he has not been consistent.
Well, you have some questioning the public protector's fitness to hold offices. That is the SACP. On the other hand, Solima Paila called the public protector a hired gun by rogue elements. I've just seen their statement a short while ago saying that the findings by the public protector are not surprising to them because her posture indicated all along that she was destined towards negative findings.
Yeah. What they're not telling you is what are the facts. Is it not true that President Ramaphosa
But do you think this political battle between the public protector and the president is politically motivated?
No, I don't think so. I think if you're going to make that statement, it must be backed by facts and not about what you like. Even the previous public protector, they said exactly the same thing. They now they see her as a heroine today, but you should go back and look at the statement that they've made. What should be of concern to us are the statements that she has made true or false? Can they be historically be demonstrated? If she says the president said this in Parliament, it is not difficult to check whether she said so. If the president benefited, if there was money that ultimately went into any of these businesses, that can be demonstrated. If it is true, then you can ignore all this character assassination, because even when they talk about the fitness to hold office, they have actually talked about repeated judgment, and I've seen a whole group of even analysts saying exactly the same, that first she's targeting Pravin Gordhan, and then she gives the number, said, look, but I investigate based upon receipt of a complaint, and I'm obligated. How is that targeting? That question is never asked. Then she says, I've investigated close to about 50,000. How does looking at a few complaints about a person come down to targeting when the questions and the complaints are not generated by my office?
All right. Prof, time constraints, but a quick one on this. In light of these two developments at the State Capture Commission, the public protector's findings, do you think the African National Congress is in a crisis?
Well, I mean, the African National Congress has always been in a crisis, but there's somehow managed that crisis. The crisis comes in, the way it was managing the crisis is to talk about being a broad church, and a broad church that will accommodate people with different interests. You have the communists, or those who claim to be communist. You have the capitalists. You have religious fanatics. You have those who are atheists. You have, but it reflects an ideological crisis because they don't know where they stand. But they have managed to paper over those, to manage those contradictions. But the contradictions are becoming so deep that creates that crisis. And you saw it also in terms of the outcome of elections, where the person who wins with a razor sharp and razor thin a margin.
But do you think they will call a special NEC meeting now in light of the Public Protector's findings?
Well, I mean, if they did that in the past, they should actually do it today. But I think the president's posture is that of behaving as if this is not a crisis, but there are contending forces within the ANC.
All right, Prof, we'll leave it at that. Many thanks for taking the time to speak to us. Professor Sipho Seepe, a political analyst, giving us his views on the two stories of the day at the State Capture Commission, where the former president had appeared this morning, and of course the findings, the Public Protector's findings on the president.